Welcome back to Momentum Academy. In this lesson, we're going to explore one of the most useful UX research methods, surveys. This lesson is part of our Bubble.io certification bootcamp, where we're exploring the foundations of UX design. If you've been enjoying the series so far, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss upcoming lessons and tutorials. Surveys are a simple but powerful way to gather real data from users. They're quick, inexpensive, and they give us insight into how people think, feel, and behave. In the Momentum Bootcamp, we use surveys to help you understand your users before you start designing or building your app. When you create a UX survey, the goal is to collect meaningful feedback that helps you design a better product. We usually build our surveys using a simple tool like Google Forms. Start with a short, friendly introduction that explains what the research is about, who it's for, and how the responses will be used. It's important to reassure participants that their answers will remain anonymous. A good introduction builds trust and increases the chances of honest responses. If your app has different user groups, you may need separate surveys for each one. For example, if you're building a job platform, you might have one survey for people posting jobs and another for people looking for jobs. Each group has different needs and motivations, so the questions should reflect that. You should also include a few demographic questions such as age, gender, or location. These help you make sure your survey isn't biased toward one particular group. For instance, if you're designing an app aimed at young professionals, you'll want to make sure your data actually reflects that audience. Next, we move on to the most important part, the questions themselves. This is where we dig into what users really need. Ask about how people currently solve the problem your product addresses. That might mean online tools, offline methods, or a combination of both. You could ask whether they use any other platforms, what they like about them, and what they find frustrating. You can also ask which features are most important to them, what challenges they face in completing their tasks, and which tasks matter most. When you write your questions, make sure they're open-ended rather than closed. Closed questions, like yes or no answers, don't tell you much about motivation or behaviour. For example, questions like, do you like this tool? Or are you satisfied with the experience? Are too limiting. You also want to avoid questions that assume prior knowledge, such as, how do you like the ordering experience of Uber Eats versus Blue Apron? Not everyone will have used both products, so the answers won't give you useful insight. Instead, ask open questions that invite detail and storytelling. You could say, walk me through the last time you used this type of product, or what made you choose the tool you currently use, or what barriers stop you from trying other options. These kinds of questions give you much richer data to work with. For your landing page or portfolio project, think about questions that will help you design your product for your target audience. If you're designing a portfolio site for freelancers, for example, you might survey hiring managers. You could ask them how they hire freelancers, what information matters most when reviewing candidates, and what makes one portfolio stand out from another. You might ask whether they've seen portfolio sites they liked and what worked well about them. You could also ask how important case studies are, whether they expect to see a downloadable CV, or which platforms they use to find candidates. You can also include a few ranking or multiple choice questions to collect some numerical data. You might ask people to rank the importance of formal education, work experience, portfolio examples, testimonials, or personal story. Or you could ask which device they use most often when looking for candidates, whether that's desktop, mobile, or tablet. Once your survey is ready, it's time to share it. Think about where your audience actually spends time online. You might post your survey in social networks, LinkedIn groups, Slack channels, or community forums. For example, if you're researching freelance hiring, you could post a message like, "Hi, we're doing some UX research for a project about hiring freelancers and what makes a strong portfolio site." If you hire freelancers, could you take 5 to 10 minutes to complete our survey? That short, polite message is usually enough to get good responses. You don't need hundreds of answers to get meaningful results. In fact, 10 to 50 responses are often enough, as long as you start to see consistent patterns. If everyone's saying completely different things, you might need more responses or to adjust your questions. Once you've gathered your data, it's time to analyse it. You'll have both quantitative and qualitative data. Quantitative data includes things like multiple choice questions or checkbox lists. You can turn those into tables or charts to see trends quickly. Qualitative data is where you look for themes and insights in the written responses. One simple way to analyse qualitative data is to copy the key quotes or phrases from your survey and group them on a digital whiteboard. Then you can start to see patterns emerge. For example, if multiple people mention that portfolio sites are too long or hard to navigate, that becomes a theme worth exploring. When we ran this process for a freelance portfolio project, several themes came through clearly. Hiring managers said a strong portfolio should be comprehensive, showing all relevant information like bio, location, education, experience, and case studies, as well as clear contact details. They also said they want to see real, individual work rather than large team projects, and they prefer sites that are short and easy to scan. They said it's important to get a sense of who the person is, not just what they can do, and they value testimonials or social proof. These kinds of findings are exactly what we want from surveys. They show us what users value most and what frustrates them. We can then use that insight to make better design decisions. Once your data is organised, present your findings in a clear visual format. Create a short summary that shows both the numerical data and the main qualitative themes. You might include charts for the quantitative results and sticky note style groupings for the qualitative insights. On this slide, you can see how respondents ranked the importance of different portfolio elements. At the top of the list was a portfolio of case studies and work experience, followed by testimonials and recommendations. Less important was the personal backstory, bio picture, and formal education. This ranking helps us understand what hiring managers and clients value most when reviewing a candidate. It shows us exactly what to prioritise when designing our own landing pages or portfolio layouts. Now let's look at how we bring all of that survey data together. On this slide, you can see a research synthesis board that we created for Momentum Academy. This is where we take all the open-ended survey responses and start grouping them into themes. Each sticky note here represents a user comment or observation from the research. We've clustered them based on common ideas so we can start to see the bigger picture of what users think, feel, and need. At the top left, you'll notice the section called About the User. This includes who they are, where they're from, their background, and their experience level. It helps us understand exactly who our learners are and what motivates them to start. Next, we have user engagement and motives for learning bubble. These tell us how active people are in their learning and why they joined in the first place, whether that's to launch a startup, build a side project, or learn a new career skill. Moving across, there's course appeals and influences on decisions. These show what attracts people to a course, such as clear content, trusted testimonials, pricing, and perceived quality. These insights are really valuable when we think about how to position our course. In the centre of the board, we can see user trust, explore and learn, and user control and freedom. These represent how confident users feel, how much freedom they want when navigating, and how easy it is for them to explore and find information. Over on the right are clarity, visibility, and personalisation. These are about how information is presented, whether the interface is intuitive, and whether the experience feels tailored to each learner. And finally, at the bottom, we have incentivize and competition. These reflect what keeps learners motivated and what might pull them away to other platforms, like rewards, progress tracking, or competitive features. This type of synthesis work is an important step in UX research. It turns a mass of survey answers into a structured understanding of the user, and it helps us spot patterns that might not be visible in a spreadsheet. Now let's look at another way to gather user insights. You might choose this approach if you have a little more time or budget, because it's more in-depth than a survey. This is where interviews and focus groups come in. The process is very similar. You're still asking open-ended questions and looking for patterns in the answers, but this time you're having real conversations. You can ask follow-up questions, observe tone, and uncover details that people might not write down. Focus on questions that start with how, why, or tell me about. These invite stories and emotions rather than yes or no answers. You'll often find that one interview can reveal insights that a survey never would. You don't need a large sample either. 3 to 10 interviews or 3 small focus groups with a few people each is often enough to start trusting your data. Once you begin hearing the same ideas repeated, you know you've captured the main insights. The results from interviews and focus groups are deeper and richer than survey data. They help explain why people feel the way they do. And when you combine them with survey results, you get a complete picture of your users. Now let's look at how we can present our research outcomes. Here we have an example of a user persona. This one we called Lauren Smith. A persona is a fictional but evidence-based profile that represents a typical user of your product. It brings together everything we've learned from surveys, interviews, and focus groups and turns that data into a relatable character that everyone on the team can understand. Lauren's profile includes her age, job title, status, and location, along with a short description of who she is and what she values. She's a freelance content writer, married with 2 children, who enjoys the flexibility of freelance work but wants to grow her client base. Below that, we have her wants and needs. She wants to add to her regular clientele and find smaller gigs during quieter periods. She needs clients who understand freelancers, easy communication, and projects that suit her skills. We also capture her pain points and preferences, which help us build empathy and design around real problems. A user persona like this becomes a reference point throughout the project. Whenever we make a design decision, we can ask, would this make sense for Lauren? And finally, let's look at another way to visualize our research. This is an empathy map for Lauren. An empathy map helps us step into the user's world. It shows what they're doing, seeing, hearing, and feeling, as well as their challenges and goals. It reminds us that behind every survey response is a real person with motivations and frustrations. At the top left, we start with what Lauren is doing. She wakes early, works from local cafes, meets deadlines, and browses freelance gigs in the evenings. These details show how our product can fit naturally into her day. Next, in thinking and feeling, we capture what's on her mind. She enjoys variety in her work, but worries about finding legitimate clients. She wants to use her time efficiently and values transparency in the hiring process. Then we have what she's seeing and hearing. She sees ads for freelance platforms and online courses, and she hears about new opportunities from friends, colleagues, and social media. These external factors shape her decisions and expectations. In the pain section, we list her main frustrations: unclear job descriptions, wasted time on low-quality gigs, and clients who undervalue her work. Solving these problems is the core goal of good UX design. Finally, we have her gains. She wants flexibility, trustworthy clients, clear communication, and relevant job opportunities that match her skills. If our platform helps her achieve those things, then we've created a truly valuable experience. Empathy maps like this give us clarity and focus. They keep the team aligned around the user's reality and help us design products that solve real needs. And that wraps up our lesson on UX research surveys. You've now seen how to collect data through surveys, how to group and analyse it using synthesis boards, and how to turn that information into personas and empathy maps that represent real users. These research outcomes form the foundation for every design decision we'll make going forward. They help us understand not just what users do, but why they do it, and that's the key to building meaningful, user-centred products. In the next lesson, we're going to build on this research and move into competitor analysis. We'll look at how to study other products in the market, what to look for in their design and functionality, and how to identify opportunities that make your product stand out. I'll see you there.